Write this down and submit it immediately. The fact is, I've had a child with my mistress. We've been together for about 5 years. From now on, I plan to live with her."
That's what he said, handing me the divorce papers. Shocked not only by the affair but also by the fact that he got her pregnant, I was at a loss for words.
"I'm going with Dad,"
my beloved son declared, further plunging me into despair. However, a few years later, an unbelievable tale of revenge would unfold. My name is Mary, a homemaker. Though I wanted to work, my frail health since childhood made it impossible. It wasn't a specific illness, but my immune system was weaker than others. Thus, I often became seriously ill from minor colds. But it was this frailty that led me to meet John. Wanting to change my weak constitution, I started going for walks more actively. One day, I felt unusually energetic and decided to walk further than usual. However, I overexerted myself and ended up feeling faint. As I rested on a nearby bench, a man approached me. That man was John.
"Are you okay? If you'd like, I can grab you something from the vending machine over there,"
John asked me kindly. As I was still catching my breath, sitting on a park bench, I felt a surge of gratitude towards this kind man who I had met by chance. "I'm sorry to bother you, but could you please do that?" I asked. As we sipped tea he had bought from a vending machine, we started conversing. Surprisingly, our conversation flowed comfortably. Despite it being our first meeting, talking with John eased my mind and made me feel a special connection. What followed seemed like a scene from a movie. We exchanged contact information and began meeting frequently, eventually becoming a couple. Throughout our relationship, John always cared for my health, allowing me to feel secure in our bond. His acceptance of my frailty filled me with deep gratitude. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and we decided to get married. I believed John to be truly compassionate. However, as we spent more time together after marriage, his true nature gradually began to surface. He started making sarcastic remarks about my health on trivial matters. I put my heart into household chores and cooking, striving to ensure he could relax when he came home. I prepared daily meals with varied recipes, keeping his health in mind. Yet John never complimented my cooking. He just ate in silence. When I asked, "How's the stew today?" I put a lot of effort into it. He responded indifferently.
"Oh, is that so?"
That was the extent of our conversation during meals. He seemed to rush through his food without savoring it. I wished he would appreciate the taste more, but I thought he must be hungry and said nothing. After finishing his stew, John looked at my plate and said, "There's still some stew left. Do you want more?" When I offered to get him seconds, he took my portion instead. As I stood there dumbfounded, he frowned and said,
"What's the problem? I'll eat the rest tomorrow. If you're hungry, just have some of the snacks over there. That should be enough for you."
Hearing these words, I was deeply shocked and hurt. Indeed, I don't work like John does, and I don't move around as much. Yet, as a human being, I need to eat to survive. I was filled with a desire to argue back, but part of me understood where he was coming from. As this situation repeated itself, I began to wonder if maybe I deserved these remarks because I wasn't contributing much. Negative thoughts started to overwhelm me. Deep down, I had hoped John understood and would stand by me despite my limitations. I had thought he was the kind of person who would offer comforting words. The fact that my expectations were shattered only deepened my sadness. But there was also joyful news. 2 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a child. Not wanting to burden John, I decided to return to my parents' home for a while. I hoped that even if he was usually indifferent, he might show some concern during my pregnancy. However, John never visited me at my parents' house. Being pregnant for the first time, and with my frail health, I felt incredibly lonely, and once called him.
"Is something wrong?"
He asked. "No, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to hear your voice. Being alone here makes me anxious." I replied. His tone turned noticeably irritated.
Don't call me for such trivial reasons. I'm busy, you know.
I understood his busyness, but still hoped for some empathy. I know, but we're married. I just want to lean on you a bit. I wish you could allow me that much, I said. His response was even colder.
I have a position to maintain. I'm leading an important project now. I can't be absent. So from now on, unless it's an emergency, don't contact me.
The call ended there. My mother, who overheard the conversation, couldn't hide her anger.
Was that John? That's no way to talk. His wife is pregnant and at her parents' home, and he prioritizes his work? Mary, are you sure it's okay to be with him?
I'm sorry, Mom, but John is really a kind person. I've told you about how we met, right? He's as important to me as a lifesaver. I tried to explain.
A lifesaver? That's a bit much.
My mother remarked. I appreciate your concern. But really, I'm fine, I assured her.
If you say so, I won't say anything more.
She resigned. I had to convince myself that marrying John was the right decision, telling myself this was the only way to hold back the tears from the feeling of being cornered. John, who hadn't visited during my pregnancy, began to help out after the birth. Perhaps his own child stirred something in him. I felt a bit relieved. With his help, our son David grew up healthy and strong. I believed we were managing well enough. John still flaunted his superiority in work matters, but I thought it was manageable as long as I remained patient. Time flew, and David became a college student, studying in medical school. John's work got busier, often requiring his presence even on weekends. I knew he was working hard for the family, and I appreciated it. To support him, I committed myself to preparing delicious meals for when he returned home tired. One day, John called me into the living room for a talk. Holding out a document, he said,
I need you to sign this right now.
To my astonishment, it was a divorce paper. Confused and shocked, I could only muster, what does this mean? You want to leave me? John's reply was blunt.
Yes, I've had a child with someone else, and I want to live with her now.
So, you've been having an affair? I asked, to which he coldly responded.
Yes, that's right. It was easy since you never noticed and hardly went out. It made my affairs convenient. I've been with her for about 5 years.
He added. Hearing the duration of his betrayal, I felt dizzy with disbelief. All my efforts and sacrifices for John seemed futile now. I realized I had never met anyone from his work, and his insistence on me staying home for my health was a ploy to keep his affair hidden. The kind words I cherished were just a cover for his deceit. The realization that he had a child with someone else while being married to me was devastating.
Then hurry up and sign this,
John said. I was in shock, unable to utter a word, just staring at the divorce papers in front of me. John smirked and continued. You'll be in trouble without me, right? After all, you can't work or earn money on your own. So I'm giving you alimony. That should suffice for your living. I retorted with anger. What about David? Don't be so selfish. Just then, David entered the living room.
I'm leaving with my dad.
It seemed he had overheard our conversation. David? I was stunned by his words. John coldly declared.
Right, it's better this way. A mother who can turn is a future burden. Let's settle this quickly. Get the divorce done.
This was the final blow. Despite everything, I still loved John. The betrayal of his affair was unforgivable. Yet maybe it was inevitable for him to find someone else. I blamed myself for being incapable. However, my desire to keep John was mainly for David's sake. Now, being abandoned by David too, I was pushed to the brink of despair. As John pointed out, I had no financial strength. Money was essential for David's growth and varied experiences. Despite the bitterness and sadness, I had no choice but to comply. With that, I resolved to divorce John. Having assured my mother that John was a good man, returning to my parents' home wasn't an easy option. I had refused their repeated invitations to come back, likely out of pride. Eventually, the divorce was finalized, and I received the alimony for John's infidelity. John and David left to start a new life with the other woman, leaving me alone in the house. The room, once filled with the three of us, now felt overwhelmingly large. In the silence, so profound I could almost hear it, I felt the emptiness of my own heart. Yet now, I must stand strong alone. After David abandoned me, I went through a phase of despair, but somehow I managed to keep living for 6 years. Perhaps due to the stress, I fell ill and was rushed to the hospital. Lying there with an IV drip, I was lost in thought. Am I done for? Can't I survive alone? Do I have nothing left? These anxious thoughts filled my mind. As I lay in the hospital bed, on the verge of tears, a doctor approached. To my surprise, it was David.
Mom, it's been a while. Are you feeling a bit better?
He asked. I was speechless, not expecting to see him here.
Surprised, right? Sorry, I didn't tell you earlier. After everything, I graduated from medical school and became a doctor. I chose to work here because I knew you often came to this hospital.
David explained and apologized.
I'm really sorry for everything. I should have been stronger to support you, but back then, I had no other choice.
Choosing John over me was for his future, not because of any negativity towards my lack of economic power. It was because he didn't want to burden me. Nevertheless, David repeatedly apologized for seemingly abandoning me.
You might think you're okay now, but this collapse was partly due to mental stress. Let's resolve this. I'll help.
David said. We spent time talking in detail about everything since the divorce, John, and even discussed revenge. David had grown more than I could have imagined, almost bringing me to tears.
You're going to be okay now.
He reassured me gently. Normally, it would take a week to recover from such a collapse, but this time, I regained my strength in just 2 days, thanks to David's presence. A few days after this event, I received a call from John, the first since our divorce. My heart raced, despite having no feelings left for him. With trembling hands, I answered the call. John sounded panicked as he began to speak.
Mary, I need your help. I'm desperate for money.
John exclaimed abruptly. He always had a way of diving into serious matters out of the blue. I suppressed my initial shock and decided to listen to what he had to say. What's going on? I asked. John, sounding frantic, replied.
I just told you I need money. Please, transfer it to my account quickly.
I urged him to explain the situation in more detail. John hesitantly started to unfold the story.
That woman I left you for, she claimed to be the daughter of a CEO. That's how I managed to pay you alimony and cover David's college fees. But I had put everything under my name, paying with her money, and now she's vanished without leaving a dime.
He continued. Hearing about his affair partner and their child running away didn't evoke any sympathy in me. It was nothing but karma.
It's a terrible situation, right? Help me out. You were my wife. You loved me once, didn't you?
He implored. That was in the past. I'm not the same person anymore. I will never help you, I stated firmly. John seemed taken aback by my response.
Don't say that. I'm so broke I can't even afford tomorrow's meal. Just a little bit of money will help.
He pleaded. Why would you even think of asking your ex-wife for help? I questioned.
I know you've always been frail and couldn't work, so you must not have money, but you still have the alimony I gave you during our divorce, right? Just give that back to me. It must be still there.
He reasoned. How can you bring up something from so many years ago and expecting me to return the alimony is absurd. Just forget it, I won't help you, I said and abruptly ended the call. This reminded me of the time I was pregnant. Back then, John had unilaterally made decisions and ended the conversation. It felt somewhat satisfying to turn the tables on him. He demanded the alimony back. But even if I had any left, I had no intention of giving it to him. I hoped this would make him give up, but he persisted. Calls and emails kept coming, so much that I had to block his number and email. This, I thought, would finally sever our ties with him. Just when I thought I had seen the last of John, he suddenly showed up at my house.
I'm going to live here from now on. There's still a room for me, right? Make sure you cook for me,
He declared, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I was astounded by his audacity. "What are you talking about? Get out of here," I said, trying to keep my composure. John, however, seemed unfazed.
Don't be so cold. You'll benefit from having me around, right? How about we remarry?
He suggested nonchalantly. "Stop joking. I'm not going to remarry you," I replied firmly. John seemed to ignore my response, casually saying,
No need to play hard to get. I might as well take a bath.
That's when David suddenly appeared, startling John.
David, why are you here? It's been a long time since you left home to live on your own after getting a job.
John said, surprised but trying to maintain a jovial tone.
Right. You're also going to live here, huh? That's great. We can be a happy family again.
He continued, misunderstanding the situation. David, however, quickly brought John back to reality.
Why are you so carefree, Dad? You don't have any money, right?
He asked. John, trying to maintain his composure, responded.
That's true. But now that I have you too, I don't feel sad at all.
I sighed deeply, seeing how delusional John was. David then decided it was time to reveal the truth.
I guess it's time to show you this.
He said, pulling out some documents.
What are you talking about?
John asked, clearly confused. David brought out a photograph from the documents. It showed Elizabeth, John's affair partner, bowing deeply to a stern-looking man.
You recognize her, right? That's Elizabeth, your affair partner. The whole daughter of a CEO story was a complete lie.
David explained.
She looked wealthy because she was borrowing money. When she couldn't escape her debts, she left you.
He added, after our divorce, David had been investigating Elizabeth. He had chanced upon a scene where she was borrowing money, bowing deeply. Elizabeth was known for her extravagant spending, which led to her mounting debts. That's when she met John and lied about being a CEO's daughter.
Didn't you ever question why she didn't marry you, even after divorcing me?
David asked.
I thought it didn't matter. We were a family anyway, with a child and all.
John replied, still not grasping the reality.
That's why you were seen as an easy target, Dad. You should face the reality.
David advised. He then presented another document, the DNA test result of the child Elizabeth claimed was John's.
This can't be true.
John murmured, collapsing to his knees as he read the report stating that he was not the biological father. Elizabeth had been unfaithful to him as well.
Elizabeth was already married to that man, wasn't she? Dad, you were just a cash cow to her.
David said, his voice tinged with disappointment.
David, when did you start looking into all this?
John asked, bewildered.
For 5 years now, the same amount of time you were having an affair. Right after the divorce, I started investigating Elizabeth. You know how much pain Mom went through, don't you?
David's words were sharp, filled with the pain of the past.
But are you okay with this? Mom, you'll suffer being alone. After all, you don't work, do you?
John still seemed to be in denial, unable to accept the changes.
Have you forgotten what I said before? I'm not the same person I used to be.
I replied, showing him the space that used to be his room, now transformed. A newly installed kitchen stood there, complete with cooking utensils. I explained the situation to John, who seemed to be lost in his own world. After you left, I renovated the empty room and started a cooking class. It allows me to work on my own schedule, and being at home, I feel safe and comfortable, I explained. Thinking of David helped me come up with various recipes, so thank you for that. Indeed, I had embarked on a new journey as a culinary instructor, My easy-to-make nutritious meals and visually appealing dishes had become quite popular among housewives. Posting recipes on social media turned out to be a great idea. I even had a cookbook publishing deal lined up. So, you see, I don't need you anymore, John. I have enough money to support myself, so please stay out of our lives from now on. As I spoke, John just slumped, defeated and silent. I had feared that he might try to contact us again, but that was the last time I spoke to John. He became busy with his own troubles. The whopping debt of $100,000 left by Elizabeth weighed heavily on him. Not to mention, he was fired from his job after his affair, and the lies he told were exposed. With no job and a reputation tarnished, it wasn't easy for him to find new employment. The world isn't that forgiving to someone who's been fired. I didn't know what kind of job he ended up taking, but I heard he was worn out, both mentally and physically. Apparently, he was being chased by some rather unsavory debt collectors. But, as Popals say, you reap what you sow. As for David, he continued to live on his own, occasionally visiting to check on me. I had been worried that he became a doctor just for my sake, maybe suppressing his own dreams. But when I voiced this concern, David just laughed it off.
You don't have to worry about that. Sure, I thought about Mom, but I made this decision on my own. I'm going to keep working hard from now on.
David reassured me with a smile. Thank you. Just don't overdo it, I replied, my heart swelling with pride. Having such a wonderful son truly feels like having the greatest treasure in the world. As for myself, I have been happily continuing my cooking classes without any health issues. Thanks to everyone's support, my business has flourished, and I feel nothing but gratitude. I view this as my second chance at life and plan to enjoy every moment of it.